Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello and welcome to the October 25th edition of Basis Loaded with Joe Schmit. I am Joe Schmit, and what we do here is break down the latest from the NDPSR report. It's the most wonderful time of year. World Series right around the corner, mid-season football, basketball and hockey just kicking off. What better way to celebrate than with the latest NDPSR report, starting with butter. This butter number coming in at $332.71 represents a minus 11.5 to the CME 1-week average of $344.30. We traded 13 loads on the CME last week. Granted, that was at a lower level than the weekly average of $344.30. So that may have done a bit to pull basis down. This week's weekly average for butter is the high week at the CME. The CME was up 1 penny to achieve that level, and you'll see here on the NDPSR able to move almost a nickel higher. It's interesting, if you look back at the October 14th release, they revised that number down almost a full penny to $327.40. and added 100,000 pounds. So 100,000 pounds put in at a lower level, pulled last week's NDPSR price down. This week, price is able to gain, even though we were essentially steady to up 1 on the weekly averages, and that basis narrowed a little bit to an 11.5. 332.71, where this NDPSR came out, is relatively close to the levels that we're currently seeing at the CME. So it'll be interesting to watch how basis narrows in the weeks to come. At that elevated level, we were unable to clear the 3 million pound threshold on butter volume, falling short at 2.888 million. Up next in cheese is our block number, 176.92. That represents a plus 6.5 to the CME 1-week average of 170.15. Now, this is the first of 2 weeks at that exact price that the weekly average sat at 170.15 prior to moving higher. We traded 29 loads on the CME last week. That's a big chunk of weight at essentially a 175-ish minus freight. So at an elevated level could be the reason that we have this elevated basis. Plus 6.5 is well over our expected 2 to 3 cent positive basis. Volume falling a little bit short of expected levels. Failed to cross the 12 million pound threshold, well short of our 12.5 million expected level. So the story in blocks is higher than expected basis on lower than expected volume. In the barrel, 164.17, that represents a plus 5.5 to the CME 2-week average of 158.60. Now, that 158.60 is 1 week off of our CME 2-week average low. So the barrels were the first to start moving higher. And on that run higher on the CME 2-week average, it looks like NDPSR sales slow to keep pace. Only 5.5 higher. It's kind of at the high end of our expected 4 to 6 cent basis, but I believe it was a little bit of a disappointment, certainly lower than I had predicted. What is not a disappointment is this volume, trading north of 13 million pounds, which is impressive as of late. So as prices have come down closer towards, let's call it reality, the value buyers have returned in both the block and barrel. Good volume speaks well of domestic demand. We'll see how things shake out in the future as prices continue to bounce around at the CME. Up next, whey, 31.73. That represents a plus 3 to the CME 1-week average of 29 cents. However, in whey, we're always concerned with prior week's NDPSR. So for this week, you have to go back to the October 7th level of 30.55. So the manufacturer was able to call almost a penny premium over prior week's NDPSR, but that doesn't really tell the whole story in whey, because if you look at this volume, we traded north of 7 million pounds, almost 7.1 million. We traded 30 loads on the CME last week, so call that 1.2 million pounds in the 37-cent neighborhood. So we had 1.2 million pounds going in at a sharp premium to prior week's NDPSR, almost 7 cents over. And with that 1.2 million and the 4.5 that you would expect to change hands on previously negotiated contract sales, that leaves a big bulk sale by the manufacturer, call it around 1.5 million pounds. And the fact that the NDPSR weighted average is still below 32 cents with all that weight trading hands up at the CME at a 37-ish neighborhood, and all the weight that you would assume trading at anywhere from a 1 to a 1.5 cent premium to prior week's NDPSR, that 4.5 million pounds. The fact that we're coming in at 31.73 leads me to believe that the manufacturer had to discount that 1.5 million pounds in order to get it moved. So we had good buying interest here. Volume above 7 million pounds, certainly impressive, but a little bit different story than we're seeing in the CME, where it's all bidders willing to pay whatever it takes to get product bought. Here in the NDPSR shows that out in the real world, buyers are a little bit more price sensitive. And then lastly, we have non-fat, 116.40. That's a negative basis, once again, to the CME 1 week average of 117.95. We traded 18 loads at the CME last week. So the CME was essentially flat week to week, and we were able to gain a little bit here on the NDPSR, with the NDPSR gaining almost 2 cents. So a little bit better than prior weeks. However, still the NDPSR is slow to keep up with the gains that we've seen at the CME. Volume here on the NDPSR close to our 20 million pound threshold. So all in all, I'd have to say that the manufacturer did a so-so job this week. So this is week 3 of 4 for the October pricing cycle. Currently getting an October class 3 of 1687, October class 4 of 2155. If you carry current CME equivalents out through the remainder of the 4-week November pricing cycle, getting a November class 3 of 1750, November class 4 of 22 even. We'll see what they have in store for us in the weeks to come. On behalf of Paige and the entire EverAg Insights team, thanks so much. See you next week. Bye.